Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Sports Central. The 2025 UFL season kicks off this Friday, March 28th. So today, we're going to be going over my 2025 UFL predictions. Starting off in the USFL conference, finishing fourth or last in the USFL, I've got the Roughnecks. For the Roughnecks, they were bad last year, going just 1-9, and I don't think they'll be that much better this season. Offensively for the Roughnecks, they've got some questions, and it starts at the quarterback position. They currently have a quarterback battle ongoing between Nolan Henderson, Jalen McClendon, and former Oregon quarterback Anthony Brown. Now, I think Nolan Henderson's going to end up being their starting quarterback, and he could be solid because he's decent as a runner, but he can definitely be a better passer. At running back, the Roughnecks, they've got Saquandre White, who's been solid in his time with the Stallions and Defenders in the past couple seasons. And the Roughnecks, they've actually got a pretty solid receiver room, as they return their top three receivers from a season ago, including Justin Hall, who led the UFL in catches and was third in yards with 604. The Roughnecks, they've also got Kirk Murray, who splits time between running back and receiver, and he was great for them last year before he got hurt. Then, defensively for the Roughnecks, they could be solid, although they lost edge rusher Chris Odom and linebacker Reuben Foster, although safety Markel Roby is back after leading the team in tackles last year and tying a league high with 3 interceptions. But as far as the Roughnecks go this season, I don't see them being too great. They've got some potential, especially if they can figure out the quarterback position, because they've got some playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, but I just don't see the Roughnecks being great. I do have them a little bit better than last year. I've got them winning 2 games instead of 1, but I've got the Roughnecks going 2-8. Third in the USFL conference, I've got the Showboats. So the Showboats 13, they really struggled last year, going just 2-8, but they had a good offseason, and I think they should show some improvement this season. They moved on from head coach John DeFilipino, and they hired Ken Wisenhunt, although he's now stepped with the team for personal reasons, so that could negatively impact them. But offensively for the Showboats, they currently have a quarterback battle ongoing between Troy Williams, who started 3 games for them last year, and former Panthers quarterback E.J. Perry, who started 4 games last year before he got hurt. Now, both quarterbacks are solid, and they're also pretty mobile, which could add another element to their offense with what they can do as a runner. Speaking of the run game, running back for the Showboats, they've got 3 new faces with Jalen Jackson, Jacob Cabody, and Deneric Prince, and I've never heard of any of the 3, but it really can't be worse than what they had last year, where the Showboats averages 65 rushing yards per game. Then at the receiver position, the Showboats are actually really good, as leading receiver Daywood Davis is back, although he's hurt to start the year and will miss a few games. But they've also got Jonathan Adams, D. Anderson, and Isaiah Henney. And along the offensive line, the Showboats should be much better this year than they were last year, where they were awful. But they made some major improvements as they signed former Stallion O'Shea Dugas and brought back Alec Woodstrom, who has NFL experience. But the offensive line should be better this season and won't hold back the offense as much. Then defensively for the Showboats, they were awful last year, but they made some great changes, and it started by hiring defensive coordinator Jaron Horton, as he was the assistant coach here in the USFL in 2023 with the Maulers, and the Showboats, they made some great moves defensively. Their defensive line should be good, led by John Atkins and Boogie Roberts, who both returned. Plus, the Showboats, they signed star corner Mark Gilbert, who's been one of the top corners in spring football, and they also signed former Vikings cornerback Cam Dantzler, although he's injured to start the year. They also signed linebacker Obi Melifanu and former Ohio State linebacker Steele Chambers. But this is Showboats defense I'm really excited about, and I think this is a Showboats team. They've got a lot of potential, as long as the offensive line plays well and they get good quarterback play from either Troy Williams or E.J. Perry. But I think the Showboats, they'll be much better than they were last year, and I've got them finishing with a 5-5 record, third in the USFL conference. Second, I've got the Panthers. So the Panthers, they're a team getting a lot of hype entering this season, and I think they're going to be a good team. Offensively, they have a quarterback battle between Bryce Perkins and Danny Etling, but I think the Panthers, they would be fine with either at quarterback, although I do think it should be Bryce Perkins because when he started a few games for them last year, he was great. Plus, with his ability as a runner, I think he can be an MVP candidate if he can stay healthy. Then, the run game looks pretty good for the Panthers, as Matt Colburn is back, who had a great year last year with 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in 8 games, while splitting work with Wes Hills, although this year it's Colburn as the lead back. The Panthers, they've also got Nate McCrary, who's a very solid running back too, and the receiver position also looks pretty good for the Panthers, as they return all UFL receiver Marcus Sims, as well as Saosi Mariner, Samson Nakua, and Devin Ross. And they give the Panthers a great receiving core, and then along the offensive line, they're pretty good as well, returning nearly every key starter from last season. Then on the defensive side of the ball, the Panthers, they were third best last year, and they should be very good once again. Edge rusher and defensive player of the year Breland Speaks is back after a huge year last year. Linebacker Frank Gindit is among best in the league, and he was actually the defensive player of the year in 2023 in the USFL. And then in the secondary, the Panthers, they're very good with the returns of Levante Taylor, Arnold Tarpley, and Kai Nakua. But this is a really good Panthers team, and I've got them finishing 6-4, second in the USFL conference. And winning the USFL conference, I've got the Stallions. They won the UFL last year, they won the USFL the previous 2 years before that, and they should be great once again. The Stallions, they're another team with a quarterback battle ongoing, as they currently have Matt Corral and Alex Magoo battling for the starting spot. Matt Corral, who was with the team last year, a former draft pick by the Carolina Panthers, and Ole Miss quarterback, and Alex Magoo, he was with the team in 2023 and actually won the USFL MVP in 2023, and he is an extremely fun player to watch. But whichever player ends up winning the starting quarterback spot for the Stallions should be arguably the best quarterback in the league, and I think they'll be in the MVP conversation. At running back, the Stallions, they've got a great duo of CJ Marable and Ricky Person, as the two combined for 571 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. And the Stallions receiver room should be good once again, despite losing Kevin Austin and Marlon Williams, as they still have Deion Kane, former Clemson receiver Amari Rogers, and they brought back Davion Davis, who wasn't with the team last year, but in 2023 he led the team with 575 receiving yards. Plus the Stallions, they have arguably the best tight end in the league in Jay Sternberger. The Stallions' offensive line, they should also be among the best in the league, as that's always seemed to have been the strength of their team. And then, defensively, they should be great once again. All UFL defensive tackle Carlos Davis returns after a huge year last year. They've got a great trio of linebackers with Kayava Tizino, DeMarcus Gates, and former Giants linebacker Tate Crowder. And in the secondary, they lost a couple of starters, but they should still be very solid at the very least. But this is Stallions team. They're going to be among best in the league. And as long as they can figure out the quarterback position, they're going to be probably the best team. I'm not concerned about the quarterback spot because I think they'll be fine with either. And even if there ends up being a quarterback controversy throughout most of the year, they won the championship like that last year with Matt Corral and Adrian Martinez. But Stallions, they've been great, and I'm not going to pick against them to finish second in the USFL conference. I've got them finishing atop the USFL with a 7-3 record. Moving on to the XFL conference, and this is tough because all four of these teams have a lot of potential, and I can easily see them making the playoffs. But fourth or last in the XFL, I've got the Defenders. The Defenders, they're a team, they've got potential, but I don't think they'll be great. They lost head coach Reggie Barlow just a few days ago, as he's going to become the next head coach at Tennessee State. And obviously losing your head coach just days before the season starts is not easy. The Defenders, offensively, they brought back Jordan Teamu, who's been decent, but wasn't great last year, as he did have 15 touchdowns, but led the league with 9 interceptions. But the run game should be very good for the Defenders, as running back Abram Smith is the best running back in the league. He had a huge year with the Defenders in 2023 in the XFL with a modern spring football record 778 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. Now, Abram Smith didn't play at all last year due to a torn ACL he suffered in training camp, but now that he's back healthy, he should be the focal point of the offense and have a big season. The receiving core is pretty solid for the Defenders, as Ty Scott, who led them in receiving a season ago, returns. Plus, they've signed former Clemson receiver Cornell Powell, and they return Chris Rowland. Then the offensive line for the Defenders isn't the best, but it can be decent. And then defensively, they weren't very good last year. They were the second worst team in terms of points allowed, but I think they should be a little bit better this season, as they return their tackles leader from a season ago, Anthony Hines. They have a good cornerback duo of DeAndre Baker and Kelvin Joseph, both which have NFL experience, and they've got a good edge rusher duo of Davin Bellamy and Malik Fisher. But the Defenders, they're a team with potential, especially if Abram Smith returns to his 2023 form before he got hurt. And if the defense improves, I could definitely see this team in the playoffs, but losing your coach not even a week before the season starts has to be tough. I don't love Jordan Tam at quarterback, but he can be decent. I've got the Defenders last in the XFL at 3-7, but they can definitely be better than this. Third in the XFL, I've got the Renegades. The Renegades, they're a team, they weren't very good last year, going just 3-7, and they started insanely slow, but they were much better in the second half of the season, and I think they could be pretty good this year as long as they don't start extremely slow once again. They're led by quarterback Luis Perez, who led the league in passing yards and touchdowns last year, with 2,310 yards and 18 touchdowns. Running back Devion Smith also returns after rushing for 451 yards last year, and they've got a good group of pass catchers, with leading receiver Tyler Vaughn's returning, plus they still have Deontay Burnett and Javonta Payton, plus tight end Sal Cannella led the league in touchdowns last year. Then defensively, the Renegades defense wasn't great last year, being the third worst scoring defense in the league, but they improved the defense a lot. They signed star edge rusher Chris Odom, they returned linebacker Donald Payne, and overall they should be much better defensively. This is a Renegades team. They've got a lot of potential. They can definitely make the playoffs, especially if quarterback Luis Perez plays like he's been playing. He had a great year last year, and if he can do that again, I would not be shocked to see this team in the playoffs. But this is a very good XFL conference. I've got the Renegades just missing the playoffs, finishing with a 5-5 record, but I do think this is a pretty good team. Second in the XFL, I've got the Battlehawks. So the Battlehawks, they're one of the best teams in the UFL last year, as they ended up winning the XFL with a 7-3 record, although they fell short in the playoffs. But the Battlehawks, I still think they're going to be a good team, but I do think they'll take a step back this year. And I think it starts offensively at quarterback. They no longer have AJ McCarron, who's been their quarterback for the past 2 years. So instead, it will be Manny Wilkins, who's got experience with the team, being on the team for the past 2 seasons, or former TCU quarterback Max Duggan. Now, the Battlehawks have said they're going to be playing both quarterbacks in the season opener, although haven't named an official starting quarterback. Although I think their starter should be Max Duggan, because Manny Wilkins is a good runner, but not the best passer. But outside of the quarterback position, there's not many questions. This is a great offense with a ton of talent. Running back Jacob Sowers is back after leading all running backs with 461 yards last season, and the Battlehawks have probably the best receiving core in the league. They've got Ja'Cour Pearson, Blake Jackson, Hakeem Butler, and former NFL receivers Denzel Mims and Frank Darby. So whoever the quarterback is will have a ton of talent around them, plus they should have a pretty good offensive line. Defensively for the Battlehawks, they should also be pretty good, as tackles leader Willie Harvey is back, and he pairs with Mike Rose, who when healthy is very good. And the Battlehawks, they've also got the 2023 XFL Defensive Player of the Year in edge rusher Peter Tamanapenu, and the secondary should be pretty good as well. But this is a Battlehawks team, a ton of talent, especially offensively. As long as they can figure out the quarterback spot, which I'm not too concerned about considering the amount of talent they have on offense, this should be a pretty good Battlehawks team, especially offensively. I think they'll end up starting Max Duggan sooner rather than later. And I've got the Battlehawks finishing the season at 6-4 and making the playoffs second in the XFL. And finishing first in the XFL, I've got the Brahmas. Brahmas, they had a good year last year. They went 7-3, made it to the UFL Championship game, and I think they should be pretty good once again. Offensively for the Brahmas, they have a new face at quarterback as they replaced Chase Garbers with former Texas A&M quarterback Kellen Mond, and I think he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the UFL. The Brahmas, they're another team with a lot of playmakers on offense. They've got a great running back duo of Anthony McFarland and John Lovett, and the receivers are good as well, as Jonte Kirkland is arguably the best receiver in the league. Plus, they've got Marquez Stevenson and Justin Smith. Plus, they've got one of the better offensive lines in the league. Then on the defensive side of things, the Brahmas, they had the number 1 defense last year, and they should be very good once again. Obviously, Wade Phillips is still their head coach, so obviously he's going to have a good defense. They brought back tackles leader Devontae Beckett. The secondary should be good, led by Jordan Mosley. The one area I do worry about is their pass rush, after losing some of their top pass rushers from last season, although they did make some solid signings, such as bringing in former Kansas defensive end Lonnie Phelps. But this is the Brahmas team I definitely think can get back to the playoffs. They've got a great defense, and I think as long as Kellen Moore is as good as I think he will be, this is going to be a very good Brahmas team. But I've got them winning the XFL with a 6-4 record. Moving on to the playoffs, we've got the same 4 teams as last year. We've got the Panthers and Stallions in the USFL, and in the XFL, we've got the Brahmas and Battlehawks. But starting off in the USFL, I think the Panthers, they can definitely challenge the Stallions. They've got a great defense, and I think if Bryce Perkins can play at a very high level, the Panthers can definitely beat the Stallions, and I wouldn't be shocked to see it. But I'm just not picking at the Stallions here. I think they'll definitely have quarterback figured out by the time the playoffs roll around. This is a very good overall team, and they've shown they can win big games. They've won the championship back-to-back years, and I've got them moving on to the UFL Championship game. In the XFL, you got the Battlehawks at the Brahmas. So this is interesting, can definitely go either way. I like both these teams a lot. I think the Battlehawks have the better offense, but the Brahmas are the better defense. Plus, they'd be home in this matchup as the 1 seed in each conference host the playoff games. And I'm going to take the Brahmas to win this game and set up a rematch of the UFL Championship game from last year, Brahmas and Stallions. This is another tough game to predict. Again, I think the Brahmas have a very good defense. They've got a lot of playmakers on offense. But I'm just not going to pick against the Stallions. They've won 3 straight championships in a row for a reason. They have a loaded team. I do think teams can challenge them, and there's the gap between the Stallions and other teams is a little bit closer this year than past years. But this is just a Stallions team, really good, and I'm not going to pick against them, and I've got them winning the championship for the fourth straight season. And my award predictions for the season, MVP is actually interesting. I don't know if I should go with the Stallions quarterback or someone like Bryce Perkins or Kellen Mond, but I'm going to go with the Stallions quarterback, and it sounds weird to say because we don't know who their starting quarterback will be, but whoever it is, Matt Corral or Alex Magoo, I think they're going to have a huge season. We've seen Adrian Martinez win MVP last year, Alex Magoo won MVP the year before in the USFL, and I think the Stallions quarterback, whether it's Corral or Magoo, wins MVP. Offensive Player of the Year is interesting because it's a non-quarterback award, and I'm going to go with Jonte Kirkland. I think he's going to have a big year with Kellen Mond throwing him the ball for the Brahmas, and Jonte Kirkland, my Offensive Player of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year is also tough, but I'm going to give it to Stallions defensive tackle Carlos Davis. He was a monster last year. I think he's going to have another big year, and Carlos Davis is my Defensive Player of the Year. And finally, Coach of the Year, I'm going to go Skip Holtz. Coach for the best team, typically how it goes, and I got Skip Holtz winning Coach of the Year. But those are my 2025 UFL predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible. I get a lot more UFL content on the way. But that's all for this video. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you next video.